This is the part of the story that has not ended yet. The emperor was dead, the war was over, the prisoners were free. Everyone thought the story was finished. But it was not finished because of what came down that mountain. It took 15 elephants and 200 mules just to carry it all away. And among all of that gold and all of those holy books, there was one small thing they carried down that was worth more than every treasure they touched. A 7-year-old boy. And that boy would never see his home again. Let me tell you what was inside Magdala. For hundreds and hundreds of years, Ethiopia had been one of the oldest Christian nations on this earth. And in that fortress and in the churches around it, the people had kept their most precious things safe. There were holy books written by hand, page by page, by monks who spent their whole lives on them. Some were older than the countries that came to take them. Beautiful books, painted in gold and bright colors, in a language most of the world had never even heard of. There were golden crowns that had sat on the heads of Ethiopian kings. There were sacred church tablets, objects so holy that ordinary people were not even allowed to look at them. Only priests could touch them. There were paintings of saints, robes of gold thread, crosses, jewelry, shields, swords, cups, the stored memory of a whole civilization. And the British Army gathered it all up. Now some of the soldiers understood exactly what they were holding. There were educated men there who knew these books were priceless, and still it all went into the bags. They spread it out on the plain below the fortress, and then they did something that many Ethiopians have never forgiven. They held a sale. Soldiers bid for pieces of Ethiopia's history, like people buying goats at a market. And then the great line of animals began to move. 15 elephants, around 200 mules, all loaded down with the treasure of a nation, walking slowly away from the mountain, heading for the sea. And then, before they left, they burned Magdala. They set fire to the fortress and destroyed it so that nobody could ever use it again. The treasure was carried onto ships. The ships sailed to England. And most of it is still there. Today, if you go to certain museums and libraries in Britain, you can see Ethiopia's holy books behind glass, Ethiopian crowns, Ethiopian crosses. Some of it is locked away in storage rooms where the public cannot even see it at all. For more than 150 years, Ethiopia has been asking for these things to come home. Governments have asked, priests have asked, ordinary people have asked. They have said again and again, these are not decorations, these are our holy things, these are the heart of our faith and our history, and they were taken from us in a war. A few small pieces have been given back over the years, a few, but most of it is still sitting in another country. But as I said, they took something more precious than gold. His name was Alemayehu. He was the son of Emperor Tewodros II. He was about 7 years old, and on the day Magdala fell, that little boy lost his father, lost his home, and lost his country all at once. The British decided to take him to England. His mother, the Empress, went with him. She was already weak, she was already sick, and the journey was long and hard, down out of the mountains and toward the coast, with an army all around her, leaving everything she had ever known behind. She did not survive the journey. So by the time the ship sailed, that little boy had no father, and now no mother either. He was 7 years old, alone,
on a ship going to a country he had never seen, where nobody spoke his language. In England, they did not throw him away, that much is true. Queen Victoria herself took an interest in him. She wrote about him, she met him, she made sure he was cared for and educated. He was sent to good English schools, the kind rich English boys went to. But listen carefully, none of that is the same as belonging. Because Alemayehu was always the outsider, always the African prince in a cold English school, always the boy people stared at, always the strange one, the different one, the one who did not fit. He was moved from place to place, from school to school, and by all accounts he was often deeply unhappy. He asked about Ethiopia, he thought about home, but he never went back. And then, when he was only 18 years old, Alemayehu became ill, and he died. 18, a boy, far from his mountains, far from his people, far from the country his father had bled to unite. And they buried him in England. His body was placed in the grounds of Windsor Castle, one of the most famous royal places in Britain. It was meant as an honor. But to Ethiopia, it was not an honor. It was one more thing that had been taken. And so, for over a century now, Ethiopia has been asking for that boy back. Family members have asked. Ethiopian leaders have asked. They have said simply, he was a child. He was taken from us. Let him come home and rest in the land where he was born. And the answer, so far, has still been no. Think about that for a moment. The father died on a mountain rather than be taken, and the son was taken anyway. So, what do we make of Emperor Tewodros II? Let's be honest. He was not a simple hero. He did terrible things. His temper burned villages. His cruelty turned his own people against him. He wanted so badly to save Ethiopia that he began to destroy the very thing he was trying to save. And in the end, he pulled his own house down on top of himself. But he was not a small man either. Because before Tewodros came 100 little kingdoms tearing each other apart, and everyone had simply accepted that this was normal. He was the one who stood up in the middle of all that mess and said, no, we are one people, we should have one law, we should be strong, and we should be respected by the world. He failed, but he put that idea back into the world, and it did not die with him. Because after him, other Ethiopian rulers picked up the very same dream. They finished what he started. They pulled the country together. They built a real army. And when a European power came again with guns, years later, Ethiopia was ready this time, and Ethiopia won. Ethiopia became the one nation in Africa that was never conquered and never colonized. And the first man to say that dream out loud when the whole country was on its knees was the son of a woman who sold worm medicine in a market. The boy they laughed at, the bandit from the bush, the emperor who would not kneel. His treasures are still in another country. His son is still buried in another country. And in Ethiopia today, people still say his name with something between pride and pain, because his story is not really finished. It is still waiting for the day everything comes home. His name was Tewodros II, and this has been his story. If it moved you, give it a like. Share it with someone who has never heard this name, and subscribe so that together we can keep telling the stories the world forgot. Because here, on Chronicle of the Forgotten, we remember. The End.